Welcome, friends, to another exciting episode of A VGM Journey, and I'm your host, The Messenger. The track that we're playing into today's show is Stage 3, Pock'n Stadium, from the game Air Zonk, and it was composed by Daisuke Morishima and Hisashi Matsuhita. I always like to say that I have a really fun show for you guys, and I like to think that trend's going to keep on going with this episode. And I say that we kick it off with a track from Lego Party. The track is Main Menu, and I couldn't really find specific composer info for this, but the game in its entirety was composed by Brad Gentle, the DA's office, David Huxtable, Rory Chenoweth, Sam Marks, Sig Pierson, Mitch Stewart, David Bruggemann, and Adam Sofo. That track that you just heard, that was the main menu theme from Lego Party, and it was composed by a whole bunch of people, possibly. Definitely going to throw all the names on the show notes. I think a lot of you know that I'm a huge fan of the Mario Party series. I just think that all the games and their soundtracks are really good. And it turns out that Lego Party is not just a really good Mario Party alternative, it also has a pretty good soundtrack, too. So when you're booting up the game, it does go for a game show style when you're setting up your game. And I feel like this track really goes for that, too. And I find the game itself to be really enjoyable, too, with its Lego aesthetic, and that there's a lot of characters that you can play as, and that you can even use the pieces of various different minifigures to create your own character, and you definitely get a lot of options with that. And it has become a bit of a favorite of producer of the show, Carly, and I. So we've both been really enjoying the game, and I think you guys should check that out. It's definitely fun for friends and family. And speaking of friends, our next track is a request from friend of the show, Martyrus, who's the host of ReVGM. And he wanted me to play the track Marvelous Sunday Time from the game Umamusume Pretty Derby. I really hope I pronounced that right. And it was composed by Hideya Kojima with vocals by Miyake.
Monday, Tuesday, Happy everyday, let's marvelous Sunday side. まだまだきっと出会えるからみんなそれぞれのマーベラス笑顔がいいな普通の果てまでもっと突き出す好きでいたいワンツーステッピーが走っていたい奇跡みたいな感情を全部抱きしめたいからマーベラス夢中がいいな昨日も明日もずっとむぎゅっと笑っていたいワンツーステッピーが走っていたい
That track that you just heard, that was Marvelous Sunday Time from the game Umamusume Pretty Derby. It was composed by Hideya Kojima with vocals by Miyake, and this was a request by Martyrus. So thank you, Martyrus, for that request. I'm just going to go ahead and say it that Umamusume Pretty Derby is kind of a weird game, and that it's a mobile game where you train these, I would describe them as pretty anime girls that have horse-like features, and that you race them like horse racing, and that whoever wins the horse race, they get to perform a concert. And I want to say this is one of the songs that is played during the concert. I'm going to be real honest with you guys. I just don't 100% know. And I think as an outsider looking in, it might just seem like it's just a generic mobile game, anime style game, but it actually seems to be pretty popular. It's spun off into an anime, and it's kind of popped up in pop culture in some weird ways. And I don't know why I was thinking about gambling, but maybe it could be a thing in casinos where instead of those virtual horse racing games that they would throw on the TVs, maybe it could be Umamusume, and you just bet on anime girls that are kind of like horses. I don't know. This is, to me, it's pretty wild, but I do think the song is a little catchy, and that I think this was a really good request from Martyrus, so I just want to once again say thank you, Martyrus, for that request. I think we're going to move on from something that's gaining popularity, and it's pretty popular now, to something I would consider underrated. And that underrated gem is Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. I'm going to play the track Pursuit, and that it was composed by Isao Abe and Syun Nishigaki. That awesome track that you just heard, that was Pursuit from the game Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. It was composed by Isao Abe and Syun Nishigaki. Man, this is so good. And I just feel like Capcom can never really do wrong with their arcade beat 'em ups. And it's pretty crazy to me that this came out in that time in the early 90s where it seems like a lot of these game developers, they would take a cartoon that was out at the time and just make an arcade beat 'em up out of it. Pretty similar to what Konami did with both Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and The Simpsons. And a lot of time it would be stuff that's really based off of some pretty popular cartoons, but you would also get some of these gems that are just based off of something that maybe they thought was going to be more popular, but it just wound up not taking off in a way that they were hoping. And I feel like Cadillacs and Dinosaurs kind of fall into that category, which is a pretty damn shame because the soundtrack is really fantastic for it, especially the stage 1 music, which I've played way, way back in the early days of the show. If I were to take a guess, it was probably going to be level 3 or level 4, but who knows. Heck, I even watched Mike Levy and Ed Wilson, who were at the time the host of Pixel Tunes Radio. I watched them do a stream where they played through the entirety of Dinosaurs and Cadillacs, and I want to say they both enjoyed that game. And I just realized that I mentioned Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles earlier, and I actually wanted to follow up Cadillacs and Dinosaurs with a track from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time. The track is Starbase 80-2100, and it was composed by Mutsuhiko Izumi. That track that you just heard, that was Starbase 80-2100 from the game Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time. And it was composed by Mutsuhiko Izumi. And that's going to just about do it for the show today. If you like what you've been listening to, have your friends check out the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and you could also check us out on TerraPlayer, which is the home for various different video game and video game music podcasts. You can email the show at vgmjourney@yahoo.com, and you could also check us out on both X and Blue Sky at VGMJourney. We also have a Discord server for the show, which I will provide a link for that in the show notes, where you can hang out with your fellow VGM journeymen and talk about games, music, and even look at some cool art. I'm also going to play things out with one more track, and this is the staff credits theme from the remake of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. It was originally composed by Minako Hamano, and that this arrangement was done by Ryo Nagamatsu. Have a good one, everyone.